you very much for your attendance this morning at Clackmannanshire Council full meeting. We have a number of apologies this morning, as you can see in the chamber. Councillor McCluckie, Martin, Law and Keogh have all put their apologies for this morning. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. The minutes of the meeting of Clackmannanshire Council from 21st of March 2024. I'll go through them page by page and just stop me if there's an issue with any of them. Page 7, page 8, page 9.
No.
Councillor Home.
I'm just looking at that at the minute on page 9 regarding one goes primary school. Council minutes says the convener advised that its legislation refers to single proposal minutes that the council holders are competent and as such would not be considered. I don't think that's an accurate reflection of the ruling that was given on the day. I've got an alternative one here that I'd like to put forward as being more accurate. I can explain why if you wish me to do so, but I don't think that's an accurate record at the minute.
Happy for you to give us the explanation if you think it's inaccurate.
Okay, well, what was actually said was under this legislation, you are required to consult on a single proposal. That's not the consultation part is not even contained within there. So my suggestion would be, in fact, just to complete what you said, under this legislation, you're required to consult on a single proposal, which is what the paper does. Any attempt to amend that with that, so I'm going to deem the amendment already by Council Holden not responsive. I would suggest that the proper minute should read the convener advised the legislation required the council to consult on a single proposal, and as the amendment would take the council out with that requirement, the amendment was deemed not competent. I believe that to be a more accurate reflection of what the ruling was on the day.
So is that your understanding of what I said when I came back after the amendment, after the adjournment?
That's verbatim from what you said, yes. The first one I read out. Under this legislation, you're required to consult on a single proposal, which is what the paper does. Any attempt to amend that would take us out with that. So I'm going to deem the amendment brought forward already by Council Holden not to be competent. That's your words, exact words.
Okay.
It does not refer anything to the required to consult on the minute, and as such I don't think it's accurate.
Listen, I'm more than happy to go back and look at that again and check the language. If that's what it is, then we'll amend the minute to reflect it.
Right. I think we're really quite approve the minute. I'm not quite sure in terms of standing orders how we get back.
The minute, well, based on what you're putting forward, if that's what's there, then I can assure you that's what we'll be put in once we go back and check that from there.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on page 9? Page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13. So subject to us going back and checking that recording and amending the minute if that's what's reflected in it, we're content to approve those minutes. It's absolutely okay.
I'm not sure, Kabir, that's a point. I'm not sure. Point of order, I'll raise a point just so I can say it. I'm not sure that's appropriate. I think we're required to approve a minute. I didn't see how we get respect of the approval.
Okay, so we'll defer the approval until we come back to the next council meeting.
It would come back anyway. Yeah.
Okay.
The minute
Come back next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so item 4 on the agenda is the Be the Future update, and Nicky's going to take us through that. Thanks.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, councillors. So this is the next in the regular update reports presented to Council on the implementation of the Council's Be the Future transformation programme and target operating model. This report updates on 3 key areas of work. Work to develop the benefits realisation plan, the development of the communication engagement plan, and an update on collaborative community-based models. I'll briefly outline each area of work. To date, we have used existing measures and case studies where available to demonstrate the progress that we're making as a consequence of our investment in transformative approaches. We've been aware of the need to develop a more refined, consistent and embedded framework to demonstrate our progress for some time. This update outlines what we are seeking to develop and how, including the initial steps to develop a more integrated benefits realisation plan baseline, drawing on our existing data sets, identifying any omissions, leading to a more meaningful set of data which shows the relationship between our activity and outcomes. Secondly, Council has identified that the communication engagement strategy work is a priority. This recognises the need to develop a transformed, resilient and future-focused model of internal and external communication and engagement. This design work will require us to consider the resources needed to deliver such a model, acknowledging that we do not currently have this capacity within existing resources. The paper outlines activity that has commenced to develop a scope document for the redesign work and to identify a stakeholder group to participate in the development and design of the approaches. Finally, the paper provides a further update on the development of a new strategic lead role to take forward the redesign of our arrangements for collaborative community models, as well as oversee some priority project work previously agreed by Council. I'm happy to take any questions on the paper.
Thanks, Nikki. Do you have any questions, Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, the collaborative community-based models work. We've got a job profile prepared and we're undergoing the formal job evaluation process. We've got a timescale for that.
We're approximately 2/3 of the way through, I would suggest. We're actually doing some external benchmarking at the moment with the support of HR colleagues as part of the evaluation process.
Do we know when that's likely to be complete?
I can't give you an exact date, but it's more imminent than, it's not further away. I'm expecting something quite soon on the benchmarking.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Coyne?
Thanks. 3.5, is that going to be an internal or an external appointment?
But we've not agreed that process yet, but the intention is it would be probably simultaneously as we've done internal, external secondment opportunities, especially given it'll be a fixed term position. Because it's the one, if you remember, that I was asked to design as a result of the budget setting process. So there were some parameters there, but it would probably be both all at the same time.
Just clarification on 3.13. I've read the last sentence several times and I think there are words missing from it.
Maybe the punctuation, councillor. So if I read it with the punctuation, I think should be there. Initial engagement has taken place with the council leader, comma, and discussions around key areas the work should consider, comma, and the potential stakeholders who will be involved. So it's a list, effectively.
Okay.
Clunky, I apologise for that if it's not clear.
Okay, I'm being too pedantic. Fine.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Councillor Forson to move.
Yep. The paper, which is a regular update outlining the ongoing work on the Be the Future transformation plan. The benefits realisation plan will be crucial to enable elected members to evaluate the operational delivery of the Be the Future work and how this will deliver the transformation we need, not just internally as an organisation, but in delivering better outcomes for our communities. I think the development of the wellbeing link will be crucial in determining the parameters and the indicators from which we will determine progress moving forwards. The communication and engagement plan is an extremely important part of the transformation, and I think this does need to be made a priority, both internally and externally, as I'm pretty sure that the majority of our citizens, and dare I say many of our employees, would struggle to articulate exactly what the Be the Future plan is. And I've had direct feedback from Alloa Community Council, which confirms this for me. They mentioned lots of things like jargon and not kind of understanding. So as we move forward, the communications plan is going to be key to make sure that everybody understands where they're going. So the plan is going to be developed and it will involve both internal and external stakeholders, and I look forward to seeing this progress. As has been outlined by the Chief Executive, work is also continuing on the post to support the work to enable the collaborative community-based model. I would stress though that work has not kind of halted on this area. Both Lorraine Sand and Pete Leonard have been taking that forward with members of the community. But this post is going to be really, really key, which is why I was, keen to know about timescales, because time marches on, and before we know it, we're halfway through the year, 3/4 of the way through the year. So it would be good to get that moving as quickly as possible, and I'm confident it will be. So please to propose the paper. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Lindsay to second.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, and just to add really a few comments to Councillor Forson's proposal there. Please to obviously support the paper and recognise the work that's continuing on the Be the Future programme, particularly the new strategic lead role, which glad to hear the progress on that, which will be a critical role in terms of developing that collaborative community-based models. And we know from our recent budget meeting the importance of that going forward. So keen to see that progress at speed. The last thing really is just to add my weight in terms of that communication and engagement plan. I think we're engaging with communities really well, and the Wellbeing Hub will probably be a good example of that as well going forward. But in terms of wider communications and the work that we do, I think we do a lot of great work. I don't think we tell a lot of people about that great work, particularly out with the organisation. I think people within the organisation recognise what's going on. I think the First Minister recognises some of the work going on as well from yesterday, but it's just building on that and ensuring that our communities, when we're working with our communities and working with our community councils, quite often we're having to reiterate points and progress that's been made on pieces of work, particularly this, and being able to showcase that through a partnership with our comms team as well would be helpful. So welcome that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Paper's now open for debate. Any wish to debate? No? Okay, Councillor Forson, you'll not want an opportunity to sum up. The paper just asked us to note the content. I'm happy to note the paper. Thank you. Item 5 is a budget strategy update. And Nikki, I think it's you again here.
Thank you, Convener. So this paper maintains Council's regular budget strategy update. The purpose of this paper is to provide an update on the post-budget setting context and the timetable and key milestones in respect of the 2025-26 budget setting process. Council is asked to approve the budget timetable, which covers a range of key budget tasks and engagements in the run-up to setting the budget by late February, early March 2025. The paper also updates Council of the enhanced focus on the scrutiny and monitoring of both savings implementation and operational spending. Additionally, it introduces enhanced scrutiny arrangements in respect of the Council's earmarked reserves. These activities are of critical importance given the extremely challenging operating context as summarised in paragraph 3.6. The paper also summarises the approach to the development of the Council's HRA revenue and capital budgets alongside the general fund budgets for 25-26. Finally, the paper highlights the ongoing political and managerial activity that is underway to promote understanding, awareness and potential action with regards to the Council's systemic and contextual challenges. I'm happy to take any questions on the paper.
Thanks, Nikki. Do we have any questions? Councillor?
Forgot my name, Benny.
Both hands went together. Councillor Benny.
Sorry, I didn't see your hand up. It's the Health and Social Care Partnership budget that I have an issue with at the moment. We're looking at a deficit of 14 million. Is there anything within that that is doable? So obviously, we don't want to be sitting at 14 million deficit at the end of the financial year. So what are we doing to actually try and sort that out?
So that figure represents the position that was reported to the IJB. So that's the whole IJB deficit position. It's not just the Clackmannanshire element. You may recall that in I think it was the last IJB, I asked a few questions around that or made some statements during that meeting. which was around how we work together across the partnership to be able to make sure that that focus on scrutiny and monitoring and recovery plans and actions is real time throughout the year, because we don't want to get to the end of the year and that is the situation we're in, that we've carried that £14 million and, you know, even worse, it had grown. But the idea is that that should be mitigated. So what you would have heard in that conversation too was the Chief Officer absolutely endorsing that position in terms of, yes, a need for ongoing review, scrutiny, and there have been a number of measures put in place, as you know, across the partnership to try and improve on the current position. But that will be an ongoing challenge, I think, through the year. It will need constant review and will need to be kept under constant review by the partners as well as the IJB.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coyne.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, it's a general question, and it's one I've asked before. Is there any chance that we can, as an additional oversight when we're being presented with budgets to look at and options, that we can have a dividing line between the restricted funding and the unrestricted? In other words, where our room to manoeuvre is, because it's useful to see, and also some indication as to whether there's a shortfall between the funding for one section and another, because it does concern me that what we might call the non-regulated expenditure is eaten up by overspend in the regulated. And that's always been a bother to me. But to quantify that would be quite useful. And I think it helps in making budget decisions as well. We get an idea of what we can touch and what we can't touch when it comes to these kind of things. Because it was useful when we did the big budget consultation in groups and in separately. It's useful to know those kind of things. It helps the decision-making process, for me anyway. And it's also helpful when you're dealing with community councils who are moaning their heads off about council not spending money, and you know they don't believe we haven't got any money. They think that money's just there. You just stick it up, but it helps us to tell the tale of where we are and why things are how they are.
We can certainly try, and we've tried on previous occasions. I suppose there are two key elements that I'd flag at this point. One is around statutory and non-statutory, which is a conversation I've just been having with the leader earlier this week. So we're certainly going to do some work. It's very, very difficult because we're a smaller system to work out how much of our resources spent on statutory activity versus the additional. So if you take a service like economic development, it's not statutory, but it's priority. So when you start to get into some of that space, it becomes quite difficult from a council perspective because you've identified particular priorities in that area, but it's not statutory. So for that reason, in the last budget round, you saw that we put up a range of options in that space. So we are trying to do some more work on that. The leaders requested it earlier this week as well. The other element I would bring in though is that I think from what I heard you describe, there were two bits that particularly overlap for me. So the statutory and non-statutory, the other bit is around ring-fenced funding and kind of open general funding, if you like. That's quite an interesting debate nationally, as you're probably aware just now, because there's certainly a move through COSLA and the Verity House agreement with Scottish Government to minimise the amount of ring fencing as far as possible on funding. The difficulty is then you sort of clip into some of the statutory territory as well. So we can tell you what is formally ring-fenced, but there is a grey bit in the middle where we're told that it's not ring-fenced, but actually we won't meet our statutory duties if we don't spend the money on the things that are prescribed. So we can do more work on describing that, if you like, through the budget process. But it is quite complex. I wish it was much more simple that you could give a definitive, here's the duty, there's the cost. It would be much more straightforward, but we will give it a go.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, this is not a question. I'll not try and phrase it as a question. Do you agree that it would be helpful if we had three categories then, ring-fenced and statutory, statutory but not ring-fenced, and everything else? I mean, that's kind of how we're having to look at this, isn't it?
That's a really interesting question. So in the past, we used different words, but effectively did an exercise very similar to that. So we did, I think, essential, desirable, and business critical. It was kind of in the same thought process line that you describe in there. And we used that through the budget process to say, what had first call on resources, when you've allocated that, what's left and so on in terms of the budget setting. So we can certainly review that in terms of the work that we do and how we put forward the options as we go forward. Have another think about that. We've got the budget working group standing up again, which, as you know, is my senior team. So we'll have a look at that and think about what we can reasonably do without it becoming a whole big consultancy exercise, you know, to try and get the exact definitions.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to just ask a little bit of question about the consultation process, because I haven't been here for a couple of budgets now. I mean, I can see the things that people respond to, and I read them, it seems like there's a lot of misunderstanding about what's going on with the budget for the general public, and there isn't really a lot of opportunity for people to give kind of really kind of meaningful feedback, because what it boils down to, even when I'm reading like a consultation documents and that, sometimes I'm thinking, oh, what does this mean? And it's not until I go speak to officers that I can actually understand what's going on there. And you know, and I think it leads to very simplistic responses. So what we do is we get tons of responses that just say, I don't mind that, don't cut that, and that's kind of no use to us at all, really. So I'm wondering, is there any thought about trying to do more kind of meaningful engagements for the consultation process, or different ways to go about it that maybe we could look at? Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. I think we've had a wide and varied experience in terms of the approaches that we've adopted on consultation, and where we are now, actually we've settled out is a kind of compromise, if I'm being absolutely honest, because we have done really extensive public engagement. You know, been in the supermarkets, we've been in the town and village halls, we've done all sorts of different things, but actually we still have ended up with the same type of feedback that comes back. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to try and raise awareness of the issues. I mean, we produced a few years back quite a more in-depth leaflet just to raise awareness around the issues, and we received a lot of praise and attention for that, actually, but it's something that the situation hasn't actually changed. So it'd be about, I think perhaps part of the comms and engagement piece that the leader was talking about on the previous item. It's about reinforcing that and explaining how it relates to each budget process. But what I would say is that we are year-round now with consultation, and I wouldn't want you to be under the impression that we just do a one-off exercise for the budget. There are engagements all through the year across all the services, using a range and variety of forums. So things are being tested and informing even the ideas before you get to the point of developing, you know, particular proposals and options. But we can certainly look at it. I know what you mean. I think it's just difficult because we've not actually found what the I can't think of what the phrase is, you know, it's a magic bullet or something, you know, that would actually allow us to get the sort of level of response that you're describing. Even when we've done the face-to-face and you do all the explanation, we've still had the same type of feedback, because understandably people don't want to see the services that they use reduced.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McTaggart.
Thanks, Convener. My question is around similar to what Councillor Coyne has just said. Would it not be possible that once we roll out the MS 365 programme, that algorithms could be built into the budget process with coding, so that these things that Councillor Coyne has just highlighted could be systematically separated out, so that it's not really a massive amount of work. It's there, just at the press of a button.
I think that's a really good point. And I think you know that I'm really keen that we become a more data-driven, data-informed organisation. It would be exactly this sort of task that would benefit from that process and those processes. What I would say is it won't be there on day one. But I think these are the ambitions. You know, this is the direction of travel that we're trying to get to a point where actually we can create the dashboards real time, we understand how resources are being utilised, allocated and so on, and what that means in terms of our business and what it means for us in terms of improvement actions, but also investment priorities and so on. So I think it's a really good point, and it is the direction of travel, but we're not quite there yet.
Councillor Forson.
Yeah, I guess my questions were around about the capital kind of underspends, which are quite significant in the overall capital programme. I am conscious though that this report is, kind of forecast to December, so it was almost 5 months ago, so we've moved on a little bit from there. But I'm just wondering, we're saying, kind of proposed carry forwards of the spends. Are we confident that we do have I suppose, the capacity and the resources, etc., to carry these forward, and they will not impact on, the capital plans, etc., for this year as well?
Councillor, I think that's the next item. Do you mind if I? Yeah, you moved on. They are related, of course, but is it okay if we pick that question up on the next item?
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Okay, any other questions? Anybody got anyone up?
It's coming there. It's not me. It's not right. It's me at the table and it's not right.
Okay, councillor Thorson to move the paper.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair, and I'm back on the right paper now. So obviously this is the budget strategy update. It's outlining our financial position and context, which remains extremely challenging. I think though I've been a councillor now since 2012 and I don't recall the budget position being anything other than challenging. To be fair, the paper outlines a lot of work that's ongoing and the work that will be carried out in relation to the budget setting process for this year. And I would say that the administration, as in previous years, will work with officers and across the chamber to reach an agreement on the way forward. So propose the paper.
Thank you. Councillor Lindsay to second the paper.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, the paper clearly outlines our current context. I mean, we don't need to overegg the current challenges that we face. We know that. We knew that coming on the back of our previous budget meeting earlier this year. I think the main thing to address, that I wanted to address, was that point that Councillor Quinn made around the engagement process. It's something when I remember when I first arrived and went through a couple of budgets as well, it was exactly the same position where you look and think, how can we engage as well as possible? How can we be as transparent as possible? And I remember as the leaders outlined, going around the county trying to find that, I guess, utopia is the word of what's the perfect way to engage. And I remember one community council going through it line by line on the spreadsheet. I'll not name that, but it was an excellent way of doing it, but at the same time it was very detailed and it almost got into too much detail and didn't get into some of the key issues as well. So I've seen extremes and I've seen others. The reason I raise it here is because I do think it is important though, and I think we have got a challenging position as outlined in the paper. How we engage is important, and I think the point that's been made around it's a continuous engagement process, and perhaps we just links back to that communication of it, how we communicate to our communities that actually we're ongoing all the time. It's not just that pre-budget period where that's your only chance to engage. So perhaps it is a framing and how we word that over the course of the year as well. That's an ongoing process. But yeah, it's a tricky position. We know that. We've got work to do. I'm keen to see how we continue to progress with the savings that we outlined earlier this year in the budget, and share the concerns in terms of that capital programme, because we've got a big capital programme coming up, as we know. So, but we'll monitor this and keep on top of it. But thanks for the report and thanks for the detail.
Okay, thank you. The paper's open for debate. Anybody wish to debate? No. Oh, sorry, Councillor Benny.
Just a quick thing. It's getting now to the stage where it is expedient to actually have a lot more meetings so that as councillors, well me especially, can understand a lot more about what's happening. There is a lot going on. There's a lot of good things going on, and sometimes I miss that because I'm looking at the depth of something else. So it might be quite good to have maybe a wee bit extra coming up over the next however months for the budget to be looked at deeper. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to debate? Councillor Forson, you want the opportunity to sum up? Okay, so the paper asks us to note issues, fairly significant issues outlined at 212 to 216, but also to agree the high-level budget timetable which is contained in Appendix A. Are we happy to approve? Sorry?
I can go to vote, that's okay, I can abstain.
Of course, yeah. Okay, so we've got a division on the paper, we put that to a vote. Those in favour of the paper, please show.
See that councillor Coyne's popped up there now as well.
That's constitution.
Okay. Those against? No. Any abstentions? Thank you. So it's 12 for, none against, and 1 abstention. So item 6 is the Treasury Management Quarter Update as at 31st of December 23, and Chris will take us through. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, Council. The paper, as presented, asks Council to note, comment and challenge, as appropriate, the update on Treasury Management activity for the period 1st of April 23 to the 31st of December 23. The paper also confirms the Council's compliance with the Code of Practice on Treasury Management during this period. I would wish to take the opportunity to acknowledge and apologise for the lateness of the report, which is a result of resourcing issues currently within the Finance section. A more updated report to the 31st of March will be presented to a future Council meeting. This report gives an overview of the Treasury Management activities for the Council for the first 9 months of financial year 23-24. Council are asked to note in particular, cash balances were 25.3 million as at the 31st of December 23. For the period, the Council achieved a return of 4.88%, equating to 1.067 million, and this was higher than anticipated in the budget. Interest rates forecasts provided by our Treasury advisors, the Link Group, are provided at Table 1, and rates are anticipated to fall in the next 12 months. The Council's capital financial requirement showed a decrease from budget due to the net effect of the General Fund capital expenditure for 22-23 being less than anticipated, and the forecast general capital expenditure for 23-24 also being less than anticipated. Borrowing reduced by 1.144 million, and no additional external borrowing was undertaken in the period. It should be noted that no additional borrowing was undertaken in the full 23-24 financial year. External debt is, however, forecasted to increase in the medium term, given the previous agreement of Council to increase capital investment, which requires external borrowing. 1.08 million was also repaid towards PFI arrangements. Given I'm not a technical expert, Helen Coleman, our team leader for corporate accountancy, is in attendance to answer any specific questions that Council may have.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Do we have any questions? Councillor Rennie.
Thanks very much, Chris. Just on point 3.24, you mentioned yourself there when you were going through the paper that there's potential future capital borrowing coming down the line. And looking at that, it looks like we're coming close to the authorised limit for external debt. And I just wondered what plans were in place to reduce the level of borrowing so that we don't go above that when we go on to further spend.
So the authorised limit for debt is a limit that we set ourselves, so we can change that as we progress through the year. It's just set so that it's a limit on what we come up to. So it's within the council's ability to change that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Clyde.
Thanks, Convener. 3.15, the mention of the GMO account being used for short-term deposits, showing significantly good returns. Are we using this as often as we should?
Yeah, so the DMO is part of the government, so we will often use it overnight for short-term investments. So we do use it at the moment we're using it on a weekly basis to put money out, but we will have to get money back because we've got commitments coming up. So it's 5.19%, so we do use it often.
Okay, thanks. Moving on, excuse me, in general, the rephasing of capital projects, the returns from invested money are less than the burdens of inflation, I think. Therefore, why would you rephase?
So you would rephase the capital programme for other reasons that are non-financial, so things like the deliverability in terms of resource availability, supply and demand issues that are out with the influence of the council directly, as well as the financial issues which you might be doing in terms of when you look at the project plans, as you get more detail, you might see that the phasing of what needs to be invested has changed from what your original assumptions were. So those would be the main sorts of reasons.
Do you have other questions, Councillor Crown?
Seemed unusually strong.
I can bring in Councillor Forson just now and let you go through. Councillor Forson.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question around about the return on investment. So it's been higher than expected, 1.067 million. Where does that go? Does that just go into the general fund to kind of improve the kind of, you know, overall council's financial position, or is it kind of kept somewhere separate?
Yeah, it goes against the general. It goes against the general fund, and the HRA has a share of it as well. So it just goes into the general revenue expenditure.
Councillor Rennie.
I just thought of an additional question on the back of that. So, based on what we were talking about before about the authorised limit for external debt within the council, I'm presuming that that level set is taken into account in the forward planning in the budget, yes? So if we then go above that, does that take us above the level of deficit that we're likely to have in future years in the general fund?
So you worked that out really quickly, Councillor. So yes, what would happen is you're absolutely right. So in terms of your planning cycle, if you remember, you always have your Treasury Management Statement up ahead of the budget setting. So whatever is required to make your capital programme deliverable would be addressed through any governance that's required in that paper that comes first on the budget setting agenda. So you're absolutely spot on.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you. Councillor Forson to move the paper.
Yep, happy to propose the paper, the Treasury Management outlined for Q3 for the last financial year, and pleased to note there's no proposed changes to that strategy. The paper outlines many technical areas, but I think most important to the Council is we continue to decrease our overall levels of borrowing by 1.4 million in the last year, and that's advanced of the planned borrowing to finance the capital programme which was agreed in the recent budget. It's good to see that we've also received a higher than expected investment return of 1.06 million, which is welcome considering the financial context that we are working within, and you know, anything that we can do to improve the council's financial position would be great. I'm not saying go and gamble all in the stock markets, but I think you know, if we're able to get higher investment returns, that's only to our benefit. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Lindsay to second the paper.
Happy to formally second, Convener, thanks.
Thank you. The paper is open to debate. Anybody wish to debate? Okay, are we happy to note the paper? Thank you. So item 7 is the Council Financial Performance 23-24 as at December of 23, and again Chris is going to take us through that. Thanks.
Thank you again, Convener. The paper as presented to Council asks Council to note, comment and challenge as appropriate the update on the financial performance for the Council for the period 1st of April 23 to the 31st of December 23. Again, I would take the opportunity to apologise for the lateness of the report. I would also wish to advise Council that the ledgers for the 23-24 financial year have recently closed, and the financial performance report as at 31st of March will be presented to a future Audit and Scrutiny Committee. Council are asked to note in particular, as at 31st of December, general fund revenue is forecasted to be underspent by 735,000. This is an improved position from that reported previously. The underspend shown in Appendix 1 comprises 181,000 from people, 243,000 from place, 132,000 from partnership and performance, and 5,000 from transformation. The Clackmannanshire element of the HSCP is forecasted to be overspent by 3.64 million, and a financial recovery plan has been developed and was presented to the IJB in line with the integration scheme. The HRA is forecast to be underspent by 3.996 million, and the HRA capital programme is forecast to be underspent by 6.285 million. The General Fund Capital Programme, as shown in Appendix 10, is forecasted to be underspent by 9.737 million, with 8.462 million proposed to be carried forward, of which 7.9 million is already built into the 24-25 approved capital budget. Underspends have arisen for a variety of reasons, including delays to business case development and resource capacity to manage works. In relation to the underspend in the Wellbeing Hub, this is a result of budget being rephased, and there's now a more detailed programme in place and costs to be provided by the contractors. The total financial spend hasn't changed, and the underspend will be required to meet the full financial programme of the Wellbeing Hub. 2.612 million, or 68.5% of savings, are forecast to be achieved, and details of the savings are shown in Appendix 2. Directors, officers and colleagues from Finance are in attendance and happy to answer any specific questions.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Do you have any questions? Councillor Coyne.
Here we go. In 2.1.6, you mentioned the gap. Oh, well, you don't mention the gap. It's 1.202 million between the approved savings programme and what the achievement is likely to be. And that difference of 1.202 million, what further measures will be required to close that gap?
Which paragraph, Councillor?
Sorry, page 45, bottom of the page, 2.1.6. Progress to date in delivering the 3.814, currently forecast to receive, to achieve 2.612, so you're shy, 1.2 million. So obviously more measures have to be taken to accelerate closure.
So each of the directors will be asked to look at those savings to see what can be achieved and what can't be achieved, and find alternative savings to ensure that the savings as forecasted are achieved.
Could I just add to that as well? Thank you, Councillor. So, because you've got the overall position is an underspend, you're not in the position where the non-achievement of those savings on the basis of this forecast would mean that you need to use reserves. So that's the first point I would make, which I think you were probably interested in. The second point I would make is aligned with the one that Chris has just made, which is sometimes what happens is there's a delay in the implementation of savings, hence the comments that were made on the earlier paper. Where there are delays, sometimes the achievement of the savings straddles more than one financial year. Sometimes we do have savings that when we do further work, we find that they're unachievable because the context has changed. But if they are still achievable, and they would, it's just a timing issue, we will continue to pursue those savings and the benefit will be realised in the subsequent financial year as well. So you've got a variety of different approaches as well as looking for alternate savings that are going on all around about that space.
And if the savings do run across into another financial year, when you report the accounts for the first year, do you then have to allocate reserves or something like that to plug the gap?
That would only be an issue if the council was in an overall deficit position. So what you've got in this scenario, in this particular outturn, is one where you'd have a return to reserves of, sorry, I've got my glasses on, 735k. So you wouldn't be needing to draw down on reserves either, so you'd have compensating savings effectively from elsewhere in the budget on the basis of this.
Right. Page 59. A big section on corporate parenting. Just a bit in the middle about the overspend in employee costs of 0.124 million. Was that unexpected?
I'll bring my colleague in on that.
No, I'm just saying.
I wanted for overspend employee costs in our midsection. So take it after.
So I think your question was it unexpected? The Woodside children's costs have continued to rise with inflation in terms of pay inflation, but the budget hasn't. So, and we have to keep to certain ratios, whatever, in Woodside. So we've been unable. So we're at the moment trying to reconfigure the whole budget for Woodside children's provision to see if we can bring it back in line. It's because of the staffing costs.
So it wasn't in any way foreseeable then?
Perhaps foreseeable. It's the same as there's other aspects of the budget that show overspend, and it's all to do with pay inflation. So although pay inflation, and that's the same. So a lot of the overspends that you see in the People Directorate are due to staffing costs that have gone up beyond what we've had in the budget, and we've not been able to adjust our individual staffing numbers to compensate for that. Does that answer your question?
Final one, the big table in Appendix 10, starting at page 69. I just want to make sure I understand what's being stated here in the last two columns. If we have an underspend in the last but one column projected under overspend, and that's reflected in a similar figure going into the final column, then we know that's just simply, it's an accrual basically. But what if there's no figure in the right-hand column? For example, the first one I pick up is the My Visitor Hub, where there was, that's an overspend, sorry. I'm looking for underspend. Only carry forward a little part. Is that a win? Is my question clear, sorry?
So I'll maybe invite Elizabeth to come up and maybe respond to the question from accountancy. So, Councillor, just for clarity in your question, so in the last two columns, the projected underspend, where if it's carried forward in full, it's reciprocated in the other column. If it's not, why would it not all be in that second column carried forward?
Some of the underspends are very small, and that would indicate that the programme is actually finished, and it's just underspent, so we won't carry it forward. That's it. So it falls to just back into reserves or whatever it goes back into the pot again. That's small, and we're talking in particular about the demand, did you say?
That's an overspend.
Oh, sorry, fitness suite, if we take that for example, it's at 1.9 underspend, and we've no carry forward.
It'll just say.
I'm having real trouble.
It'll just say it's an underspend in the year. It'll just be an underspend against the capital budget. So eventually what it means is we won't finance it at the end of the year. So say we won't need to borrow for it. It will just, it won't go anywhere. We'll just lose it.
So in layman's,
in layman's language, it's a win then. We've underspent on a project. That's fine, that's all I want to know, thanks.
Councillor McTaggart, to be followed by Councillor Rennie.
Thanks, convener. Just the underspends and indeed overspends, would they put any projects at risk? So if it's underspent and we're having to carry it forward into the next year, which might mean that the costs will be higher, would the project be at risk? If there's an overspend, is the project at risk because we don't have the money to complete it? Thanks.
So what happens with the capital programme is you're constantly getting new information, as you'll appreciate, and obviously we've had a lot of changes to prices, particularly and supply issues over the last wee while. So that's constantly being reflected through the capital programme. At various points, we would never do anything that you as council wouldn't know about, because if it came away from what you approved in the capital budget, that would come back. So if the scope changed, we would report that back. If the spend changed, we would require governance for additional spend. So you would always be cited on that. So in terms of your question about is the project at risk, it would never be at risk without you, or should never be at risk without you knowing about it, and it would actually be ultimately council that would take the decision on that. So it would be, you should be alerted to the situation, so for instance price pressures or whatever, what that means in terms of the scope of activity, and there would be an option there for council about what that means in terms of the ability to deliver either the full or a reduced level against an individual project. So that would be how it would work, rather than, you know, we'd just kind of let it roll away and it'd either not turn out quite as you wanted. The regular monitoring should bring that forward.
Thanks, Nikki.
Thank you. Councillor Rennie?
This has stolen my thunder. This was most of my questions, but just to further clarify on that, in some areas we say there's been an underspend, like for example in the city deal resourcing due to reprioritisation of projects. Would it be possible, I mean, in other areas like underspend in Clackmannanshire caps be carried forward to 24-25, would it be possible just to add an additional line in just to say due to, the same way we have with others?
I think in terms of expanding the narrative, we can look at that. I think it would be helpful. We need to make sure that the communication from the services through into accountancy who produce the report is actually gives you that fuller information, so we can pick that up.
Thank you. Councillor Quinn?
Thanks, Convener. Quick question, just about one item, Appendix 10 on page 69. I'm just wondering what it is, because the difference is so large. So free school meals equipment, because we've budgeted over £1 million for that, and we're going to spend almost none of it and only carry forward 180,000. So just because the difference is kind of so large there and we're not carrying it forward, I'm just wondering if you can explain, or somebody can explain what free school meals equipment is and why we're no longer needing that much money on it. Thanks.
Okay, I'm glad to answer that question, Councillor. So some time ago, when the government announced that we're going to have the free school meals free to all ages, we were asked to do a review of what that might mean for a revenue cost basis, but also on a capital cost basis. We had very limited information about what the impact might be. We did some physical inspections of our cook chill facility at Clack's Cuisine and felt that we needed to do some expansion work there for additional storage. Similarly, we felt that we need to do a number of capital works at a number of our schools around the place. As we've learned more about the process and as we've gradually rolled things out now to include P5, we're only P6 and 7 to do, we've come to realise that we don't actually need that level of capital funding anymore. So we're speaking to the Scottish Government around that in terms of the funding that we do need. So that explains why there's such a big difference.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No, thank you. Thanks, Chris. Councillor Forson to move the paper.
Yep, happy to propose the paper which provides an update on the financial performance for the council up to the end of December 2023. It is obviously some time ago and positions have moved on. The general fund is showing a small underspend, although worryingly the Health and Social Care Partnership continues to forecast an overspend, which is concerning and should be concerning for us as a council, being a partner there. We have heard that further work is needed and has been undertaken in this area, and we will receive future updates as we move forward. The HSCP budget runs slightly kind of out of kilter with the council budgets as well, so we never really get a full picture until well after our year end. Capital underspends, it continues to be a trend, I think, in recent years. And I do think that we need further consideration when setting future plans, just to make sure that these are minimised, because we always seem to be carrying projects over at the moment for all the reasons that have been identified, particularly around about capacity and being able to deliver the projects. So we maybe need to build a wee bit of that. And in the future, there's a lot of information on there within the kind of service delivery demands, particularly around areas like, I think, childcare and our kind of social work area. It's very demand-led, so there will be ups and downs as we move throughout the year. Hopefully, though, we tend to see an overall settling down and services coming in within budget. A lot of work goes to, I think, pulling this paper together, so thanks to everybody for that. And hopefully we can have some good comments from around the chamber, but I would hope that everyone's able to support the paper. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lindsay to second.
Thanks, Convener. Yep, share many of the comments that have just been made, and with a sort of people cap on, and as the former sort of people convener, some of these areas that have been highlighted, particularly some of the underspends and some of the overspends within some of the projects, it is not something that we've not seen in previous budgets. And when we had that people committee, we did get a really clear breakdown of each area, and we're able to go through each service in some details. And there was pros and cons to that. But looking at the budget overall and looking at some of the challenges that have been presented, whether that's in relation to capacity or indeed the pay inflation that was noted there, and obviously there was a big strain on that over the last year to 18 months. So we recognise the challenges that do exist and having to react to these issues, albeit some of those pay increases were fully funded, but there's still pressure on the system and that impacts on the financial performance of the organisation. So the capital programmes, we've talked about that a fair bit. We understand where that's headed, but share that concern around the capital programme underspend related to capacity, which I agree we do need to address. But overall, appreciate the work that goes into this, huge amount of detail. I think questions have been really helpful in terms of pulling out some further detail and hopefully some further smoothing over in terms of narratives, etc. So thanks. I'm happy to second.
Okay, thank you. The papers. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just to really echo what was said there by Councillor Forson and Councillor Lindsay. It's really impressive to see the amount of work that goes into this paper in terms of looking at the detail that's within the tables and the appendices. It gives us a really good impression of what's happening and lets us really understand where these underspends are coming from. Like I said, there was could we have a wee bit more detail in the bit further up, so it's encouraging to know there'll be a bit more detail on some of these underspends. Just echoing what others have said in terms of, we're hoping that these underspends will not impact on future years and that there'll be still be the capacity to deliver. My concern only is if there was lack of capacity within that to deliver, that may then extend into further years. And obviously, we know that you're keeping a close eye on that, so we would hope that would continue to be monitored. But thanks very much to the officers for really detailed papers for us to consider.
Okay, anybody else wish to debate? Yep. Councillor Forson, do you need the opportunity to sum up? No. Okay, thanks. The paper just asked us to note the report from 2.1 to 2.16. Are we happy to note? Thank you. Item 8 is the Wellbeing Hub and Lockheed School project update. Lorraine, can you take us through that? Thanks.
Thank you, Convener. This paper provides the latest update on the Wellbeing Hub and Lockheed School project, as we have committed to bring a paper to each council meeting. The report provides an update on the pre-construction programme, including the Hub Co Stage 1 submission, the plan and pre-application consultation programme, the co-design process and the feeder design competition. The Hub Co Stage 1 submission, which is due this week, I think might even have been received as we speak, includes all the projected costs and the detail that has been collected to this date as part of the project. This will be reviewed and approved by the project team and the board before we formally move to Hub Stage 2. At the same time, the formal pre-application consultation process has now concluded. And that report will include collated feedback from the consultation events and submitted as part of the full planning application. The project remains on schedule, with the full planning application planned for submission by the end of June. All being well, the intention is that will be held by the Planning Committee in October. In addition to the statutory events that were held under the pre-application consultation events, wider consultation has taken place with community councils, other key partners such as Sport Scotland and Health, and with the Lochie school staff. The co-design approach has also informed the design, and that's with a group of people who have lived experience and who have been supporting us to get it right for them and their needs. That's informed the design throughout, and although the formal role of the group has now concluded, the engagement with them will continue to help inform the operation of the facility as well. And it'll ensure that the community and user voice is included as we go forward to meet the requirements. The paper gives details also of the two winners of the Wellbeing Hub and Lochie School Outdoor Space Design Competition, which was run in partnership with the FIDA, the Future Institute at Dollar Academy. And I'm happy to take any questions on the report. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lorraine. Do we have any questions? Councillor Harrison?
Well, no, Lorraine, thanks for that. Just a quick question. I probably know the answer, but just to give everybody else a wee bit of a overview of it. Given the last couple of papers, what's the kind of level of scrutiny and kind of overview that council officers have got on the project with the designers and the architects and the contractors?
So obviously we've got the scrutiny at these meetings in terms of the regular updates, but as part of that full planning application, once that's submitted, it will go onto the portal. Anybody can look at the details and the detailed plans, the traffic and the transport statements, the site investigation reports. That will all be as part of the planning application. Council representatives, of course, will have the opportunity to be part of the application that is presented at committee, which we're hoping, as I mentioned, to be on the 31st of October. In addition to that, the outline business case, which will include that report that we've just had from Hub, with all the detail of all the technical as well as the operational detail that we've gathered up until now, which will inform whether the project is affordable. That will all come back to Council in June in draft, and then again we will have to Council in December the full business case, which will have all the financials. So I think at every stage of the process we're bringing things back to Council to make sure that you have that opportunity to scrutinise and see all the level of detail. Up until now it's a lot of reports, but we're getting into that stage pretty soon between June and December where we will get all that level of detail. Thank you. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks. Thank you. Questions, Councillor Benny?
Yes, thanks. Just a quick one, Lorraine. Are we still on track where all the things have been met? Because obviously that's a lot of work that's going to be done, and if there's something not quite right, then it can take it back quite a bit. But I'm assured that that's probably going to be okay. The other thing I did want to say was congratulations to Harrison and Emma for winning that competition. It's really nice to see some, the kids actually being involved as well. So yeah, that's just really all I wanted to say.
Yes, we are on track. We kind of slipped by a week or so, and then we make that up again. Myself and Robbie just met with Gary Bushnell, the Chief Exec of Hub East Central this week. I think it was this week. It's been a busy week. I think it was this week. And as part of our strategic, oversight of the project to make sure that it's fully sited, should there be any slippage whatsoever. But if anything, it's been marginal and we've managed to regain. But yes, we're still on track with the programme, which is thanks to the team who have, regular meetings weekly, practically daily actually, to keep everything on track.
Thank you. Councillor Coyne?
Thanks. A bit about my question has been answered by a bit more reading. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thanks, Lorraine. Councillor Harrison, to move the paper.
Yep, thanks, Convener. It's really pleasing to see this project reach another milestone with the application submitted and community engagement sessions having been held, along with the online engagement. The officers have also been involved in the project to engage with community groups such as the ICCF, and last night actually Ross Maguire came along to Clackmannanshire Community Council to present there on the Wellbeing Hub, and it was pretty well received, with probably no real surprises on some of the issues that cropped up, but it was overall well received, which is great to see. You'll see from the paper as well that there has been ongoing engagement with the Lochies community, the teachers and parents there as well, which is driving the design for Lochies as well. So as we move from REBA stage 2 and progress into stage 3, there will, as Lorraine's just mentioned, be much more detailed reports coming forward to Council, but for now I'm happy to move this.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lindsay to second.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, just to build on comments there, just around really the progress that's been made, significant progress, and just that openness that we're receiving in terms of just the detail and detail that will increase as we go forward into REBA stage 3 as well. So just thanks for the continued updates and detail that's provided. Just wanted to draw attention to that point Councillor Harrison's just mentioned around the engagement with Lochies in particular. Huge amount of engagement that's going on, but with the staff, with the school community, and with the young people as well, around ensuring that the needs are met at every step of the way. So also to note the visit to West Lothian to look at a similar project as well that's received LEAPS funding from the Scottish Government as well. So reaching out to other areas to look at good pieces of work and good practice is key as well going forward. So pleased to see the progress, pleased to see the level of consultation continuing. I know that plan is to do that. And yeah, I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. The paper is open for debate. Does anybody wish to debate paper any further? Nope. You're happy to note the paper? Thank you. Item 9 is the Scottish Housing Regulator annual return of the Charter.
Thanks, Convener, and good morning, Council. So I'm pleased to present the report on the Scottish Housing Regulator's annual return of the Charter 2024. This is the first time we've managed to bring this to Council before it's submitted to the regulator. I just want to thank those who's made that possible, especially Stanley Muir, who's the Performance Information Officer. It's been a real hard push to get all the information together for this report. Just to note, the regulator is currently reviewing the indicators in the ARC. They've established an advisory group to consider the indicators, and these will be consulted on later this year. The new ARC collection will be for 25-26, and the first submission of that will be in May 2026. We'll keep members updated of that progress at a future Housing Performance meeting. So the ARC was missing some detail on adaptations because we are relying on external contractors giving us information. I have that information for you at the moment. So the number of households waiting for adaptations to their home at year end was 67, and this is compared to 96 last year, so that's an improvement. The total number of adaptations, again an improvement of 297, so that's 33% more than last year. It has taken longer to complete adaptations from 74 days up to 164 days, and that's because some adaptations have been kind of backlogged from kind of COVID times, and now they've been completed, it's kind of bringing that completion time up. So we're asking the Council note the submission to the ARC, which will be submitted to the regulator on the 31st of May, noting the performance results and measures for scrutiny purposes, and approve that in line with SHR guidance, the Senior Manager for Housing confirms the acceptance of submission, and that future ARC reports will be submitted to the closest audit and scrutiny committee to enable for performance to be scrutinised in a meaningful way. Thanks for listening. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks. Kate, do we have any questions? Councillor Coyne.
Thank you. We look at page 82 in the table at the bottom of that. There's a figure near the bottom right-hand corner, SHR current tenant arrears as a percentage. It's stated at 2.42%. Is that 2.42% for the entire rates bill for that year?
Yes.
Well, if you take the figure at the top of 601,708 and you divide it by that percentage, you get a figure of 24.8 million. On page 123, it states that the rents collectible were just under 20 million.
Caroline might be able to assist me on that. Indicator's quite complicated, there's a lot in it. Because
if you calculate it on 19.9 million, the figure jumps to 3% from 2.42.
The guidance is that
So what Caroline's saying is the guidance is very specific on the indicators that we put back, and there's specific things in the guidance which we need to include and not include. So that might skew the figures slightly, but what we can do is we can double check that and come back to you, Councillor Coyne.
That's fine. Okay, thanks. Yes, here we go.
Page 81. 3.8, as part of the charter, local authorities are required to demonstrate performance, etc. Are all the tenants notified of the outcome of that? And what if they're not online? How do they, if it's through a portal, how do they get that information if they're not online enabled?
So what we do every year is we actually create a tenants report. So we pick a few kind of indicators and we'll put that in a report. It goes online, the full app's online as well, it'll go on our website, but we do print off a number of these and they get put into local caps and they're available in the council building. Tenants should hopefully know now that this goes out every year, and I know that housing officers and things do go out and speak to their tenants about this, so if they want a copy we can certainly provide that to them.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, 3.10, a multi-trade contractor procured to support our internal trades, etc. What is the problem with the contractor or the procurement process?
Contractor. It's been very slow, and the work that they've been putting back, so it's been very slow, more than anticipated.
And this contractor's record hadn't been looked into in the procurement process.
The report indicates will be a full report coming back to members on this situation. The actual contractor had been looked into. It was actually the top performing contractor within the specification framework with the procurement framework that we selected to go through at that stage. There have been certain challenges that will be reported detailed back into council in next month. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Ryan.
Thanks. Yeah, 3.13, the percentage compliance with SHQS, a significant drop from at 39.3%, then moved up to 93.54, which is highly commendable. I take it that during that period there was no actual tenant disadvantage because these were just sort of official checks and things like that.
Yeah, it's previously been reported to council the impact in terms of SHQS was largely a result of our EPC performance certificates, which at midnight they go out of date. Doesn't necessarily mean to say the property loses all its energy efficiency benefits, it's just the fact that it went out of date. Unfortunately, the staff member was going through a period of long-term illness at that stage. Done a lot of work internally, especially with the lawn system, doing a lot of catch-up with the energy performance certificates to bring those back up to date. And obviously now we've got a full rolling programme over the years to make sure that situation doesn't occur again.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Quinn, to be followed by Councillor Rennie.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to ask from Councillor Coyne, in 3.15 it says that he was to complete that by, so that's page 82. And it was completed by the end of June this year, so are we still on track for that? And then after that point, will we be 100% kind of essentially compliant after that?
Yes, as far as I know, we're still on track.
Excellent, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Rennie.
Yeah, just in terms of the amount of rent that's lost through the property that's been empty through the reporting period, 267,000 thereabouts, and also the fact of the situation with the money that the council agreed to put into dealing with the voids. Can you explain maybe a bit why there's been a delay in that moving forward the way it should? It might be in the paper, but apologies if it is.
Yeah, we'll pick up that wider point in the report, as I've explained to Councillor Coyne, in terms of the movement, in terms of that contractor moving through the last of the buybacks. As it today it stands, we've got 45 normal void properties. So has been a reduction in our normal void properties. This paper will document there is a number of void properties which we can handle within our own house contractor, due to how many we can get through per week, and obviously that's why we've had reliance on the external contractor in terms of the properties we got off the shelf. So that will be detailed and documented in the report. In terms of the void loss, obviously a couple of years ago we were the number one in the country in terms of our void rent loss at 0.6%, give or take. Obviously across the country the sort of aspiration around void rent loss is around 1% in terms of a target. Obviously at present we are slightly above that.
Yeah.
So our aspiration is obviously to get that back under the 1% and moving forward with that as the situation progresses, because obviously the longer the property is rented, take longer to get people in, less money we have then available in terms of investment within our stock.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Hiya. Is there an opportunity for us to take in-house fixed-term contract and manage those ourselves? It seems that the contractor that we've employed hasn't been performing. So, is there an opportunity for that to be looked at?
I wish Council to jump to pre-conclusions before obviously seeing the report, and obviously Gavin Smith has done a lot of work working with the contractor to obviously bring things to a fore in terms of their progression as well. So the situation may develop as the weeks progress, as we head towards the council meeting at the end of June as well. In terms of the report, one thing I think we need to acknowledge is obviously internally, within our own capacity, there is a capacity that we can obviously work through in terms of a weekly and monthly basis in terms of void properties. Clearly, in terms of buying properties off the shelf, it's capital funded, it's extra stock for our properties as well. So clearly it's something in terms of the overall repairs structure and property structure, it needs to be something that we need to look at in terms of the mix, in terms of what work we decide to do in-house. Obviously that has grown over the years. The movement in terms of bathroom programmes becoming in-house, as it used to go outside externally, the work in terms of the kitchen programme. So it has to be a delicate mix in terms of what is we decide to deliver within in-house resources versus what we decide to procure and get best value with delivering out with the authority.
I'm not sure that answered my question. Are we looking at what we can do internally? Have we looked at what our internal teams deliver now against what contractors are delivering now? And if we increased our internal teams, would we get a significant uplift in performance and turnaround of these properties?
I would say since the movement of so if we go back to the days when we were in Limetree House, the house investment team was based separately out with the repairs team. And certainly since the movement in terms of the conjoining at that stage of house and repairs and the capital investment team, since that stage we've constantly looked at in terms of what's going to deliver best value for our tenants. And that's where we've moved in terms of the delivery of certain functions which were progressed externally. So the bathroom programme, kitchen programme, that's been delivered in-house. So there has been, over the years, been a review of what can be delivered in-house. That's ongoing, and as well as Pete and Alice now looking at the structure, that will continually to be looked at. There is obviously differences that come into mix. It's not just about capacity in terms of the actual tradespeople. There's wider capacity in terms of what the depot can handle in terms of its size, the size of our fleet that we can handle, and obviously other aspects in terms of our wider corporate support. So yeah, all those things come into the balance and it needs to be looked at within the wider round. So it's not a straight yes or no answer. So for example, if we decide fully that we're going to deliver in terms of the self-purchase refurbishment in-house, that might mean that council may need to decide or look at putting other works out externally to make sure there's the capacity to deliver that. Apologies for my throat.
Apologies for the answer to 2 questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, thanks to you both. Councillor McTaggart to move the paper.
Thanks, convener. This paper is a statutory obligation that we submit an annual return of the charter, the ARC, to the housing regulator yearly, which, as has just been mentioned, will go in at the end of this month. The ARC, as an Appendix 1, will be submitted by Housing on behalf of the Council, and there are a number of very positive indicators within this. I won't go into all the indicators, but I'll highlight a few. Overall arrears figures show a downward trend, with former tenant arrears figures being the only figure that hasn't improved. Former tenant arrears are more problematic to recover, but the team's working to improve this percentage. Allocations indicate that of a total figure of 357 lets, 236 of those went to homeless applicants. And while we're committed to decreasing and indeed eliminating homelessness in Clackmannanshire, this means that there are less properties to let to the general list applicants. Homeless lets also create a heavier workload for the housing team. However, we must be mindful that a decent home is a right that everyone should expect. Our tenant satisfaction figures are again very positive, and tenants feel that they're being kept well informed, at 93% and 97% respectively. With the recent appointment of our tenant participation officer, we expect these figures to rise still further. We're about to carry out a stock condition survey to determine what we need to do to reach our net zero target, which is essential to meet our commitment to address climate change. Currently, over 93% of our stock meets the SHQS standard, with a target set for next year of 99.25. This is a massive achievement for such a small council. It's noted in the ARC that we have 34 abandonments during the reporting period. This is disappointing, and the housing team are doing everything possible to prevent abandonments. We hope that that figure will have improved by the next return. Abandonments create extra work, loss of rent and council tax, additional repairs and less properties to let to those on our housing list. Noted in the paper is that the housing team provide a monthly performance update, which allows elected members to engage with the team regularly and keep up to date with ongoing initiatives and performance. This is very welcome. Happy to propose the paper. Thanks, convener.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hamilton to second.
Or the second.
Okay, thank you. The paper is now open to debate. Anybody wish to debate? Councillor Rennie.
Sorry. Thank you. Just in general, I'm really pleased that this is going to come to Audit and Scrutiny Committee. Obviously, as the Chair of Audit and Scrutiny, I'm really pleased that we'll have the opportunity moving forward to look at this. But, you know, as a group, we were really pleased to see the positive outcomes in terms of tenant satisfaction in most areas of the report. That's really great to see that people are happy with the tenancies that they're getting through Clackmannanshire Council. My only concern really is I'd raised my questions about the situation of the voids that we had put money into recruiting someone to a company to address that, and it's not going the way that we hoped it would. And particularly, as Councillor McTaggart was saying there, we're really trying to address homelessness in the Clackmannanshire area. That really is something of concern, and I really hope that we manage to address that moving forward to reduce that level of voids. And I think that's only going to lead to further satisfaction moving forward. But generally, it's really good to see that tenants are happy with the tenancies that they have. And again, I'd also echo what Councillor McTaggart says. The meetings that we have with housing are really, really positive. It gives us, you know, before we come to council, we really know a lot of the answers to our questions, which is really helpful. It gives us real access to those officers, which I think is really a positive way forward. So thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Do we have any other contributions to the debate? Councillor Coyne?
Yeah, just to echo really what the others have said, I think it's clear that the team behind this are dedicated and working hard to the target. And it's good to know that something is working quite well.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor McTaggart, do you want the opportunity to sum up?
Thanks, convener. Just like to thank the team for the hard work that they put in daily, weekly, monthly, not just annually, as in the Act report. So the team are very, very dedicated, as Councillor Coyne has mentioned, and I'm very proud to be spokesperson for the team because we have got an excellent housing team. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the paper asks us to note the 23-24 submission of the ARC, which will be submitted to the Scottish Housing Regulator on the 31st of May 24. Note the relevant performance results and measures for scrutiny purposes. We've been asked to approve that in line with the SHR guidance, the Senior Manager Housing confirms acceptance of the submission and that future ARC reports will be submitted to the closest audit and scrutiny committee to enable performance to be scrutinised in a meaningful way. Are we happy to approve? Thank you. Okay, so the final item on the agenda is an exempt item.
Sorry, convener.
Of course.
Earlier on, when we looked at the consideration of the minute, 1st of March, you made it ruling. I've contacted the clerk, the relevant standing order, as the meeting's not been stopped. I've left it until the last possible minute before we move on to the final item. I believe that your ruling and how you propose to handle my objection to the minute has not been accurate as contrary to standing orders. If you'll allow me, I'll explain where I think it is. Standing order 21.2 says no discussion or amendment will be accepted on minutes of a previous meeting other than an objection that they are not a correct record, which is what I did. Any objection or those involved if not agreed result in an amendment to a motion approving the minutes or part of the minutes. What that effectively means is that my objection to the correctness of that minute has to be heard today. You can't hear it in camera, you can't hear it offline and then report back in the next meeting. I can explain the reasons for that. I think they're obvious why that isn't allowable, but I can do that if that's required, if members require it. But effectively what this means is that you're required to either agree to the objection today or not agree to it, in which case I'm entitled, you must then put forward the motion and I'm entitled then to amend it and have a vote on that. If you do it offline, I lose my ability to challenge it.
Okay, so without going into the debate around that, I'm going to take an opportunity to take a look at the standing orders on that. So it's probably wise, I think, to grab a 10-minute recess, give you an opportunity to have a comfort break, and we'll come back at 11:10.
I can get the time.
Councillor Coyne, that'd be well. Councillor Preston, Councillor Coyne.
Apologies, convener.
Okay, thanks everybody. Councillor Holton, your point of order, we've checked all the standing orders, it's correct. What we're going to do is take another 5-minute adjournment to allow us to go next door, listen to the recording and come back and compare that to the verbatim we submitted for inclusion, and we'll pick it up from there. We need the decisions from the council once we come back. So we're going to adjourn for 5 minutes again. Okay? Thank you.
It's reliant.
Apologies, that was clearly longer than 5 minutes, but as Councillor Holden alluded to, you're right, the recording's not particularly easy to listen to. You need to listen to it several times to pick up what's on it. But having done that, and I have to agree, what Councillor Holden's put forward is a correct verbatim statement from what's in the response that I gave back after we came back from the adjournment. I think on reflection, having listened to it myself, that the response could have been fuller and more explicit. It was potentially ambiguous as to the reasons for the rejection of the amendment. I think we focused around the issue around proposal versus proposals, when actually the more important point was around the validity of any motion, proposals that were coming forward on that day, and I haven't reflected that in the response that I've given when I come back. So I do apologise to Councillor Holden first of all, but to the rest of you for that. I think I've properly captured the advice and response that I gave. So on that basis, I'm more than happy that we correct the minute to reflect the suggestions being put forward by yourself, Councillor Holden.
Thanks very much, Camille. I've got to go, as you know.
Thanks for that. We have one last item which we're proposing be held.
Do we need to approve the minutes? Have they been changed?
Sorry, could you say it again?
Do we need to approve the minutes now?
Actually, sorry, you're right, Councillor Quinn. Can we just formally approve the change to the minutes based on the suggestion put forward?
Just read it out for the rest of us. Like.
So the.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I hope that I've got this bit right. So basically, the corrected wording is that the convener advised that the legislation required the council to consult on a single proposal and as amended would take the council out of the requirement and amendment was deemed not competent. But the amendment that the minutes should reflect is that sorry, that's the right one. That's the right one. So that's the right wording, my apologies. Is that the convener advised that the legislation required the council to consult on a single proposal and as the amendment would take the council out of that required amendment was deemed not competent. That's the amendment to the minutes of the meeting. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, are we content to approve that amendment?